Hello everyone, welcome to the first theoretical chapter. In this video we will discuss sixth move alternatives for white. In my previous opening course about the queen's gambit accepted for black, I started with the most challenging lines and the main lines from the beginning. But here I wanted to do something a bit different. I started with the sixth move alternatives because I wanted you to learn typical ideas in these pawn structures. And then later on we can move to more challenging lines where I show interesting fresh ideas. That's why we start with alternative first. So let's take a look at open Sicilian e4, c5, knight f3, d6, d4. This move is a sign that will go to open Sicilian territory. You will face this most of the time, though you will also face other sidelines on move 2 very often, so they are as important as the open Sicilian. We take c takes d4, knight takes d4, knight f6, knight c3, knight c6. So this is the open Sicilian, classical Sicilian. And here we'll cover everything but not bishop g5 and bishop c4. So what I mean by that in this chapter, we'll go through bishop e2, we'll take a look at f3, g3, f4, and so on. As I said in the introduction, our main idea here is to play e5, bishop e7, short castle, and to go for d5. We can also prepare d5 by playing h6, and we'll later on see some small nuances in the position. Let's start with the move knight b3. White avoids the knight trade. He wants to keep more pieces on the board since he has more space. As I said, against all sidelines, there is only one exception, but against most of them we play e5 and we go for our typical ideas: bishop e7, short castle, bishop e6, and d5. This will transpose to 6 bishop e2. After white plays bishop e2, he has no other good moves. So we play bishop e7 and we transpose to a different line. So another option is knight takes c6, though this isn't really good because we can play b takes c6. We can get our b pawn towards the center, and this exchange actually helps us. It helps us in getting our pawn to d5. So once again, our plan is very simple and straightforward. We will go for e5, bishop e7, short castle, and then bishop e6 and push d5. This isn't really a good move. Knight takes c6. You won't face it very often, but I just wanted to tell you that it's not a good move, even if you face it. Another option, and a bit tricky, is knight to d5. This was played by some GMs in mostly in blitz time control. It's a bit tricky if we don't know how to deal with this move. So our f6 knight gets under attack. white wants to ruin our pawn structure. But here we have a forcing sequence to win a pawn. Of course, it won't be a clear pawn. White will get some compensation in return, but we'll get an easy play. So we go for knight takes d5, e takes d5 is forced, and queen a5. We give a check and attack the pawn on d5. Bishop d2, queen takes d5, so we get a pawn by force, though white will get some compensation in return, but nothing more than that. Knight b5, this is the whole point of the line. White wants to play knight c7, though we can play queen to e6 check, bishop e2 and queen d7. When we defend c7 square, and our plan is very simple. We want to play a6 to kick the knight out of b5 and then finish the development with moves e6, bishop e7 and short castle. Here engine actually doesn't give us a huge advantage. I was surprised to see that. But we have a pawn, we are up a pawn, and if we manage to complete the development, uh, we'll have a clear, will be a clear pawn up. So let's go back. Now we're starting with more serious moves. h3. h3 is also possible to play in the Knight of Sicilian. h3, white wants to probably go for g4 and bishop g2 to develop this way. Again, we go for e5. We play this all the time. There is only one exception. We will see it later on. e5. So again, moves like knight b3 and knight takes c6 are possible again, but not threatening at all. If knight b3, we can play bishop e6, and we are already threatening to play d5. If we manage to play d5 in the classical Sicilian in this pawn structure, we are at least fine. So the same is for knight takes c6, we just recapture with the same plan of playing bishop e7, short castle, bishop e6, and pawn to d5. Here, the other two tries are knight from d to e2, and this is where things get a bit tricky. Since white has played pawn to h3, his plan is to play g4 and bishop g2, trying to occupy this weak d5 square. If we continue development as usual with bishop e7, this is actually inaccuracy. Only in this case with move h3, since white has very strong move pawn to g4, and if we play bishop e6, white can play bishop to g2. When we are not able to play d5. So if we can't play d5, we hardly have other alternative ways to attack in the position. So here white is slightly better. So instead of playing bishop e7, that is too slow, we play bishop e6 immediately. So our idea is to hurry up and to play d5 before white can stop us from doing that. And our next move is d5 no matter what white does. g4, this is in the spirit of h3 line, we play d5. So we managed to play d5 we're at least equal. The game, we can continue like e takes d5, knight takes d5, bishop g2, attacking the d5 knight, knight takes c3, knight takes c3, queen takes d1 to force white knight to go backwards, and then we can castle long with active play. We have control over the d file, we have a nice pawn in the center on e5, more active pieces. So this happened in Kamer against Isik, and black won. So you can check that game out. I linked it in the file. So instead of playing knight d2, knight f3 is always an option after e5 attack. And here we continue normally with bishop e7. There is no reason to hurry up with bishop e6 since white is not threatening this bishop g2 anymore because the knight is uh, placed on f3. So we continue normally with bishop e7, bishop c4. There's also bishop d3, though there isn't a big difference. If bishop d3, we castle short, white castles short. And here is one small nuance that I like to point out in many of these lines, positional lines. Our idea is to get d5. To get d5, we would like to prepare it with bishop e6 first. Playing bishop e6 immediately would be good, though here white can play knight g5. This isn't a big deal for white, though I don't want to give the pair of bishops too easily. So a good rule of thumb is whenever white's knight is on f3, we first play h6 to cover g5 square, and only then we go for bishop e6. If white's knight is on b3, not on f3, then there won't be a need to play h6. Though it's possible, but there is no need to do so. So remember that's very important rule of thumb here. That's why we play h6 first, covering g5 square, and then with the idea to play bishop e6. Also, h6 is good to prevent white from playing bishop g5 and then taking the knight on f6 and occupying d5 square. So h6 is anyways a useful move. And after something like bishop e3, we go bishop e6, and we will play d5 next with uh, equal chances. Though it's very easy to press and to win this position. Bishop c4 is more active, and here it seems like white stopped us from playing bishop e6. It only looks like that. We can actually play bishop e6. And yes, this uh, trade is welcomed since we get our pawn towards the center, and this pawn supports d6, d5 pawn push. So you should be happy to get these double pawns. They're not bad, they're actually good, since this pawn helps us in getting d6 to d5. Um, and it's important that we traded uh, it for a bishop, not for a knight. If it was like white had light squared bishop, but not this knight on f3, like in knight g5, knight takes e6 line. Thus it wouldn't be good, because our light squares would be weak. But in case of trading bishops on e6, we are good. So bishop b3 is another possible way to keep the tension between these bishops. But now we go for h6, not allowing knight g5. As I said, a good rule of thumb, do not allow knight g5 to attack our e6 bishop. And after short castle, we castle short. And our plan is to play knight a5. We will see almost the same position later on in this chapter. Our idea is to play knight a5 to threaten to take a pair of bishops, and also trying to occupy a weak c4 square. This trade is always welcomed. We can follow up with rook c8, queen c7, a6, b5 with active play on the queen side and in the center. This occurred in Hikaru Nakamura against Alireza Firouzja, and Firouzja won a nice game. So again, I linked that game in the file so you can check it. Now let's take a look at the sixth move, pawn to f4. White wants to grab some space in the center. There's also possible move, though again we continue with our usual reply, pawn to e5. So again, White always has a choice. If he can play knight b3, he can take on c6, but positions will always be similar. In case of f takes c5, this isn't good because why would White trade his active f4 pawn for our weak d6 pawn? We recapture with the pawn, and after knight takes c6, we take on d1, king takes d1, and b takes c6. When we get a comfortable position, bishop e6 is next, long castle, bishop c5 or bishop b4, and black is slightly better. Instead of f takes e5, white can of course go for knight b3, though this isn't too threatening. We continue with bishop e7, and in case of f takes e5, we recapture with a pawn. If queen d8, bishop takes d8, and short castle is next with equal position. Knight takes c6 is also possible, but never really too threatening. We recapture with a pawn. F takes e5. Here d takes e5 is possible too, though here I like knight g4 even more when we are threatening to take on e5 with a knight, and in case of e d6 we take with the bishop. Yes, we are down a pawn, though we have great compensation in return. h2 pawn is hanging, queen h4 can come next, ruining black's, white's king's position, short castle. So we have a very quick development, and here black is better. So the most challenging move I would say in this f4 line is returning the knight back to f3. When we continue with our normal development scheme, bishop e7, bishop to d3, and here short castle is possible and perfectly playable, though since white has played f4, we have one additional option, and that is the move queen to b6. The whole point behind this move is to not allow white to castle short. Now it's really hard for white to get his king castled. He can't castle short very easily, and it's also very hard to move this bishop from c1 since b2 is also weak. So white would need a lot of time to get his king castled. That's why I like queen b6 more than the most common short castle. Queen e2, this is the way for white to finish the development. He wants to play bishop e3, though he also needs to play rook b1 to prepare bishop e3 due to weak b2 pawn. We castle short, rook b1, and we play bishop e6. Our usual development scheme, bishop to e3. So finally, white will be able to castle short, queen a5, f5. If short castle, we can already break in the center with e takes f4 and then d5 when the position will get open and our bishops will get active and white's king will be uncomfortable and exposed. So f5 seems strong. White is trying to kick our bishop from active e6 square and getting back the control over d5 square. Though here we have a very nice tactical idea, tactical resource. So I want you to pause the video and try to find a nice resource to get the initiative. Here we should take a look at forcing moves first. We should not calculate moving our bishop backwards. Instead, we should take a look at captures. Bishop takes f5. Very nice move. The idea is that after e takes f5, we can play pawn to d5, threatening both e4 and d4. And it's impossible for white to save a piece. We will get a piece back very soon. So that was sixth move. f4, it only looks active, though we get nice chances with easy moves, and f4 only weakens this long diagonal. So now we go to the move 6 g3, and this move is the only exception where we don't go for our usual e5. And let me show you why. Instead of playing e5, we'll go for dragon-like pawn structure with the move g6. If we play e5, this will actually weaken the d5 square. And after knight from d to e2, if we play bishop e6, trying to get our pawn to d5, white can play bishop to g2, preventing us from pushing the pawn to d5 and preparing knight to d5 jump. So it will be hard for us to get any counterattack. So in case of g3, we are not able to play e5. So you see, when white tries to develop his light squared bishops, his light squared bishop on g2 with in lines like h3, g4, or g3, we have a bit different move orders and plans. Against g3, we go g6, and we get a good version of dragon, since in dragon, the only challenging line is bishop e3, queen d2, and long castle, where white attacks our king with h4 and h5. If he can't do that, then dragon is perfectly playable. So here, white has played g3, that's a sign that he is not going to castle long, instead he will castle short, and dragon is fine there. So if he is going to castle short, we can comfortably play g6 and bishop g7 and have a great version of dragon. Bishop g2 is the main move. So there is also knight from d to e2, where I like one move a lot. Bishop g7 is possible, though I like b6 more. We want to develop our light square bishop on this diagonal to counter white's strong bishop on g2. So let's say bishop g2, we play bishop g7 to counter the bishop, and we'll play bishop g7, short castle, rook c8, knight d7 with great version of dragon. And against bishop g2, here obviously we can't go for b6, and we also can't play bishop g7. I want you to pause the video and to see why bishop g7 is not working here. Bishop g7 is not working due to tactical reasons, so be careful here. White can play knight takes c6, bc6, and here white can play pawn to e5. That's very annoying. Attacking the knight on f6 and also pawn on c6, where white is better. So before playing bishop g7, we need to do something with these knights. And we play knight takes d4. Usually this knight trade is favorable for us since we have less space, so trading pieces is always recommended in that case. Queen takes d4, and we play bishop g7. Again, with great version of dragon, we'll castle short, play bishop e6, a5, with great prospects on the queen side. Here you can check a good game that was played between Adams, Mickey, and Kramnik in 1998. I linked the game in the file so you can check it. This is great version of Dragon, where black is already equal. So g3 is just a bit tricky, but not challenging.